So Chaplain Earls stood in for me last week, and I tell people often that he is the younger, better-looking version of me. Also, he's like 6'3". So you will not get us confused. But he kind of gave us a little parenthetical, a little parentheses, a pause in the series that we've been doing, and talked about the meaning of marriage. So hopefully you guys had a chance to be here last week to hear that. And this week, we're going to continue our series that we've been on for 4 weeks. This is the fourth message out of a 5-message series called From This Day Forward, 5 Commitments to Fail-Proof Your Marriage. Are you ready? Yes. Awesome. That's what I like to hear. So by way of review and introduction, let me see if I can go through the first 3 commitments that we've already talked about. Commitment number 1 was seek God, right? We got the first 3 up there. Commitment number 1 was seek God. We said that we are going to not, he's the one, she's the one. We said we're going to look for the one who is God. Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength. This is the first commandment. The second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. So we said you seek the one with your 2. What? So I'm not looking for the 1. Julie is not my 1. She's okay with this, because if she was my 1, I would be a hot mess. God is my 1, and as I seek him with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength, I'm the husband I need to be for my 2. So we together seek the 1. That was the first commitment, seek God. The second one was fight fair, because we're seeking God, but we're going to have some friction here. Just like iron sharpened iron, there's going to be sparks flying, and that's how we're going to work on each other. And like we said this morning in Sunday school, the schoolhouse of character development. You don't have to go any further than your own home, probably, if your home is anything like the rest of us. So we said we're going to fight fair. We said that unhealthy couples fight dirty. They fight dirty to win. It's about me winning and dominating and putting you down and making my case superior to yours. It's a terrible idea. You should try it. We said that healthy couples fight fair for reconciliation. Healthy couples fight fair. The win becomes unity in the marriage, reconciliation. So neither of us are winning when there's disunity in our marriage, okay? So that was the commitment number 2. We're going to seek God, we're going to fight fair, and my favorite one, commitment number 3, we're going to have fun. We're going to have some fun. Jesus gave us these commandments, and in chapter 15, again, we talked about this in Sunday school, Jesus said, I'm telling you these things so that my joy would be in you and that your joy would be full. Sometimes I think Christians forget this is supposed to be fun. And in marriage, we forget sometimes. We're supposed to be having fun. Nobody got married because they were really boring. We'd go out to dinner and we'd just sit at our plates and stare at each other and get out our iPhones and scroll through Facebook because this person is so boring. And so we got married, and we never laughed together at all. And so we fell in love and got married. You don't hear that at all. You're the opposite. It was so fun. We could talk for hours. We didn't care about anything else in the world as long as we were together. We had love and rolled tacos, and it was great. So we said you got to have face-to-face fun, side-to-side fun, and belly-button to belly-button fun. This is very important. See me after class. If you missed last week, you might want to get that one online. So we said those are the first 3. Seek God, fight fair, have fun, and today, stay pure. This is a topic that I'm extremely passionate about. I have planned to go for 28 and a half minutes, and we're just going to see how it goes, because I might just talk a lot. So, commitment number 4, stay pure. Stay pure. Let's go ahead and continue with a little word of prayer. Pray that I don't say anything too crazy, because Julie also listens to these sermons online. So let's go ahead and start with a word of prayer. Lord God, thank you so much just for what we've already been able to experience this morning in worship, just with the awesome band and the energy they bring, and the choir coming up with the special music, and the servants that we see running around doing the ushering, and just making all this happen. Just the fact that we're in a comfortable building this morning with a roof over our head with lights on this morning tells me that we are more wealthy than about 90% of the world. And Lord, I just thank you that we have this beautiful place, the history and the legacy, the heritage that it carries. And I pray that this morning, as we consider our own marriages or our marriages to come for the singles here today, Lord, that we would be mindful of this, the importance of the marriage covenant and the symbolism that it bears in identifying to the world the love of Christ and his church, his bride, of which he is the head. So Lord, I just pray that we could be blessed today by this message. In Jesus' name, amen. So I normally share my own embarrassing stories. I'm known for TMI. especially by the young Marines. We do relationship awareness training in the barracks, and that gets real. E5 and below single Marines, so I'm like a grandfather to them, and I go in there talking about my relationship and some of the highs and lows of my own wife, and they're blushing and sweating, and like, this is awesome. So for this morning, I want to kind of set up the stage for this message of Stay Pure with the illustration that came right from the book. We said we're basing this book, or this message series on a book that's called From This Day Forward, 5 Commitments to Fail-Proof Your Marriage. So I didn't come up with this. This is from pastor and author Craig Rochelle and his wife Amy. They co-authored this book. So he tells the story. So there he was, in a hotel room with his wife. And he's on the bed clicking through channels, and she's in the bathroom, getting herself beautified, about to go somewhere. So he thinks, okay, she's in there doing her thing, she's not paying attention, I'm just clicking through channels. And everybody's done this before. You're just clicking through the channels and, sports, click, news, click, infomercial, click, girls dancing in bikinis on the beach, click, news, click, sports, click. He doesn't think anything of it until his wife comes out. And she sits down on the bed next to him, looks him in the eye. Why'd you stop on that one channel there? And so he tells the story in the book. His mind's racing. Oh, you mean the one music video? The song is really, I like the beat. It was good. What are you talking about? I tried to play dumb, but he realized he was caught. So he just looked at her and said, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done that. And he said that her response to that kind of revolutionized his life in this area. Because she looked at him and said, well, was it worth it? Could you imagine that? With tears in your wife's eyes and your husband's eyes after you've gotten caught. 3 seconds. That was a 3-second affair. Mindlessly clicking through. Click. But it broke his wife's heart to the point, was it worth it? Really, was it worth it? And so that question kind of sets up the context of this discussion on staying pure. So consider for a moment the price. Consider the price of sinful pleasure. Whether it's a 3-second affair or a 30-year affair, it threatens intimacy. That's what not staying pure does. It threatens the intimacy in your relationship, not only with your spouse, but more importantly, in your relationship with God. So the question, is it worth it? Brings that consequence of that moment of sinful pleasure, brings that to light. So that's what we're going to talk about a lot today. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? Has it been worth it to you when you've fallen in this area? Has it been worth it to you? I think we would all, because especially we're in church today and you're talking to the good chaplain, you would say, no, it's not worth it. No, of course not. It's not worth it. That moment of sinful pleasure pales in comparison. It's like having a mud pie in exchange for a glorious Cheesecake Factory strawberry cheesecake. They don't compare at all. So we all know this. Intuitively, our conscience, we know this, and yet there's a great gulf between knowing this and doing this. And so we continually fall into this area of sexual temptation and sexual immorality. It's like quicksand, and it doesn't appear to be so dangerous and deadly until you get caught in it, and you realize you're stuck, and it's dragging you down literally to death. So our verse for today, as I mentioned, is Hebrews 13 and verse 4. So if you're there, you can follow along in your translation. Mine from the ESV says, "Let marriage be held in honor among all, and let the marriage bed be undefiled, for God will judge the sexually immoral and the adulterous." So I share this verse because I think it points out very concisely that purity matters to God. Purity matters to God. Marriage matters to God. And this isn't only for married people. I keep feeling the need to emphasize that because I see singles out there. I said maybe the first week we ought to have all the singles raise their hand, and maybe you guys could go to Johnny Rockets after church together, and you never know. You never know. But purity matters to God. I guarantee it matters to your spouse. And I guarantee for you singles, it matters to your future spouse. You might think I'm just having fun, I'm sowing my wild oats, but your purity will matter to you, to God, and to your future spouse. I promise you that. So it says, let the marriage be undefiled. What does that mean? It means that there is one way to have God-honoring, marriage bed-honoring sex in life. And that is when a man and a woman come together in the bond of marriage. And they become one. And they do this through belly button to belly button fun. So that is the one way to keep the marriage bed undefiled. It is the only way to have God-honoring, marriage bed-honoring sex. So a study was done several years ago by the University of California, San Francisco, and this is a little bit shocking to me. They reported that the number of extramarital affairs happening this decade doubled in one decade. How is that possible? That kind of scares me, and it should alarm you that the number of extramarital affairs, people infidelity, has doubled in the last 10 years. So there's a couple of reasons I think are intuitive almost of why that might be. If you think about it, why would adultery be twice as common today? While part of their study also showed that more people agree that it is not ever okay, but yet we still do it more. Interesting. So I think the one thing is we face easier access to temptation. Just, again, going to Vegas this last weekend, I was there visiting family from out of town. Also, the food is incredible. But you cannot go to Vegas without having a spiritual onslaught of temptation. We're going to talk about that a little bit, but there is easier access to it. It didn't exist 10 years ago. Some of the social media, access to the internet on your phone. I remember growing up when I came across my first bit of adult content was at my buddy's house, and it was the classic. It was his dad's stash. You guys know the story. So that was my experience with it. But fast forward, the internet wasn't really a thing that the common man did until I was a senior in high school, and it was like AOL and like chat rooms, and you couldn't put pictures in there because you didn't have the bandwidth on your dial-up. It was like, and hi, what's your name? Where do you go to? And that was about as far as you could get. You fast forward, and it is literally at the tip of your fingers is the most grotesque kind of, I want to use the word adult content to family environment, but you guys know what's out there. We need to talk about this because we're failing miserably at it. Another phenomenon this day that causes the widespread infidelity is that we tend to wait longer to get married. So follow this train of logic. We tend to wait longer to get married. You're setting up your career, you're finishing school. We hear this all the time. I'm going to get married after we finish college and my master's degree and my PhD, and about 33. Once we have the house, then we have the car, and then we have the kids' college savings put in place, then we're going to try to start getting pregnant. So typically, people are a lot older. They've been dating a lot longer. The more you date, the more opportunity there is for temptation. You could be a well-meaning Christian couple intent on saving yourself for marriage, and the more people that you get into a serious relationship with, the greater the temptation, the greater the likelihood is that you're going to fall into this area of sin. So put it in perspective from my viewpoint. I've been a pastor for about 10 years, and I have married at least 50 people, done at least 50 weddings. I know of 2 that stayed pure till marriage. Stayed pure as in just didn't have sex. We could argue about what's the definition of purity if we wanted to, but just waited till they were married to consummate the marriage. 2. That's 4%. That's 4%. And I don't think that's just my experience. And God says, let marriage be held in honor by all. Let the marriage bed be undefiled. So this is concerning. As a pastor, how do we lead the church? And it's concerning because I know that I have struggled with this. Personally, Julie and I could tell you story after story of the struggle to wait till we're married. So, I hear a lot of people say, well, you got to test drive the car before you buy it, You got to test drive the car. So we live together and we do married things together because that's totally normal in our culture. Totally normal in our culture. But in this book, he points out that the logic of that is faulty because cars and people are not alike. One's an inanimate and one is animate. One is dead, one's alive. I could go trade in my car tomorrow for a brand new model with less mileage on it, and my car's not going to get its feelings hurt. I could drive a sweet, new, sleek, beautiful, 0 mileage car right next to my car in the driveway, and my car's not going to get jealous. I could get a new car every day. I could go rent one, put a couple miles on it, drive it around, have a good time, turn it back in, go grab another one. You see where I'm going with this? Drive it around, put a couple miles on it, throw it back, get another one. I could get this a new car every day if I wanted to. And if all I was doing was driving cars, then I wouldn't carry around the baggage of having given myself to so many different cars. Tracking? Like I do now, because I wasn't talking about cars in my adolescent years. and I carry around this baggage. Chaplain Griffin, you have this baggage in this area? Yes, because I didn't get this training or I was too stubborn to listen to it. So I'm passionate about this topic because it's been my experience, and I see it in so many of us, the damage this causes. And it's not talked about. It's kind of, we keep it under wraps because it's so normal in our culture to have this experience. So, today, we're going to talk about purity from two vantage points. Very simple outline for you because I just kind of wanted to have a conversation with you today. So outward purity is the first area we're going to talk about. Outward purity. This is the things we do with our bodies. This is what we see with our eyes, what we hear, what we allow ourselves to touch and experience outwardly. And this is what other people see in us, right? This outward purity is what other people observe. So I want to look with you in Ephesians 5, if you could flip there. Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 3, I think hits this pretty concisely when it comes to what should other people see when it comes to my outward purity. Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 3. Sexual immorality, but sexual immorality and all impurity or covetousness, which is idolatry, must not even be named among you, as is proper among saints. And some translations say there must not even be a hint of sexual immorality. Not even a hint. So this means that the casual observer, observing your life and mine, my relationship and yours, should not even see a hint of sexual immorality in my life, in my relationship. What is a hint of sexual immorality? Don't we all have different definitions of that? Perhaps. So let's take a pop quiz. This will be fun. You can grade your own. Here's a quiz. If I'm married and I have sex with somebody at my office, sexual immorality, hint of sexual immorality? Probably. What if I have sex with my neighbor or a friend? We're just friends with benefits. Sexual immorality? Just a hint? Maybe. What if I look at a website with adult content? Hint of sexual immorality? What about lust after a famous Hollywood character? What if I dress provocatively to get attention or to entice someone through my sex appeal? 1 Corinthians 8:12 says if I do that, if I intentionally cause someone else to stumble by lusting after me, then I'm sinning against them and against Christ. This is what 1 Corinthians 8 says. So what if I just go out to dinner and by myself, just having some chow, and I just flirt a little bit with the waitress? I'm just having a good time. No harm done. I didn't, it's on the menu. I can just look at the menu, can't I? So what if I just flirt with the waitress? Is that a hint of sexual immorality? What if I read a book like 50 Shades of whatever? Hint of sexual immorality? What if I just watch R-rated movies with nudity or HBO TV series with graphic sex scenes? Is that a hint of sexual immorality? I think historically, especially when it comes to TV and movies, I've even tried to do this myself. We justify it, but, well, this is, how it was back in Rome, back in the day, this is how it was, and so this is just really historically accurate. So I'm going to choose to make it entertainment in my living room? Really? Really? So Jesus is coming over tonight. We're going to have some brats and beers, and we're going to watch, I'm just going to say it, Game of Thrones. I'm just going to watch Game of Thrones in my living room with Jesus. Really? That's what you're going to do when you're one night entertaining Jesus in your home? And I'm throwing that one out there because I was on deployment, and we had movie night, command movie night, and we started to watch this series. And as soon as the scenes come on HBO Adult Entertainment, everybody looks over at the chaplain. So I didn't get to watch the series. I'd like to think that I would have made that choice on my own. But because of that positive peer pressure, I was like, I just can't watch that. I'm going to go be praying for all of you guys back in my tent. But you guys know that we struggle with this, a hint of sexual immorality. We allow it because it's culturally acceptable. I know it might sound extreme to say, well, we don't even allow a hint. Well, you're saying we can't watch HBO now, chaplain? I don't know. Would you do it with Jesus in your house? Because he is... Your body is a temple, and the Holy Spirit is in you. If you call yourself a Christian, you are hanging out with Jesus right now, and not just in church, but when you go home and turn on your TV, and when you speak with your spouse, and when you go on that date, he is with you. How is your conduct? Is there a hint of sexual immorality? There's not 50 shades of gray. In this area, it is black and white. To illustrate this point, I'm going to tell you something personal about myself. I have a disease called poo-poophobia. I despise feces. Maybe it's the PTSD from having to stir the 50-gallon drums in Iraq, and you stir in with the jet fuel, and you have to mix it up really good and light it on fire. Whew! So just last night, the good Lord gave me an illustration. As I had put my kids to bed, I'm finished up my notes and everything, get everything in order, and I go upstairs to grab something, and I notice my son's light is on, and that's not right, because he should be in bed right now. And so I go inside his room and realize, after I get accosted by this aroma that almost knocks me over, that he has taken to finger painting when he should be in bed. And the medium that he had chosen for this particular work of art on our wall was his own diaper art. So we'll call it diaper art. So that's pretty gross, and I did what any mature husband, man, father, spiritual head of the house would do, and I said, Julie, get your son! It was terrible. He said, poo-poo, poo-poo. I'm like, yes! And the only reason he was drawing on the wall is because the slide coming down from his bed was already taken up with space. There was no more space on the slide. It's terrible. It's terrible. So I have this thing with poo-poo. It's poo-poo phobia. That's what I call it. Julie's thing is vomit, so we have a deal in our house. I take care of the vomit. Kids throwing up everywhere. It's on the walls. It's on me. I don't care. That's not my thing. Poo-poo, whoo! I freak out a little bit. So I asked Julie if I could share this story. So there I was, getting ready to go to work, and I'm giving my wife kisses because I love her. I'm kissing her neck, and I'm kissing her ear, and like I said, TMI, it's okay. So I'm giving my wife some kisses on the way out the door, and I smell something that doesn't smell like her normal sweet self. And I take a closer look, and this is before my LASIK, but I could see these specklings and smears on her neck. I said, surely no. Surely no. Surely no. In Jesus' name, please, no. But I had been kissing this area where, sure enough, one of our kids had got her. She had just had a blowout that morning. Not her, but the kids had a blowout that morning, and she was engaged in a cleanup hazmat project. And she got some collateral damage on her neck, and then that got in my face. So feces finger painting is bad enough, but feces finger painting on my face, that's over the top for me. But as I consider, not even a hint of sexual immorality, I feel like that should be the same disdain that I have. Is I'm not okay with a little bit of poop on my face. Not even a little bit, not even a hint of poop on my face is okay with me. This is how I feel like should be the same loathing and disgust we have for even a hint of sexual immorality on my TV, in my living room, in my marriage, in my home, in my life. Right? Don't walk around with poop on your face, because that's gross. That's gross. That's powerful, right? It's powerful. Jesus also took this kind of seriously. I have this verse in your notes there, Matthew 5, and verse 29 and 30. He says, if any part of your body causes you to sin, you ought to cut it off. Right? I'm just going to leave that one there. But I think he's making the point. I don't think he's necessarily being literal, but he's saying you ought to cut your eyes out, cut your arms off. If they cause you to sin, cut them off. That's radical, Jesus. I think he's trying to make a point that your body is mine. I have a right to say this. I've bought you with a price. I've paid for you with my own blood. This is what it says in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, 19 and 20. Glorify God with your body. I think he's making a point of how violently we ought to attack baby wipes, Lysol, bleach. Get it off. It's disgusting. Not even a hint. So, here's some practical things for you to practice outward purity. Practicing outward purity. I think the number one thing you can do is to get an accountability partner. What is an accountability partner? An accountability partner is somebody who is going to keep you accountable. This person can call you out on your stuff and say, bro, you smell like poop. You might want to check the mirror. You got something on your face. It's disgusting. You stink. This is a brother-on-brother, sister-on-sister relationship. Some people will say they use their spouse for accountability partnership. I don't recommend it, and I don't know too many that do, because it puts a lot of pressure and strain on on your marriage relationship to try to keep that knucklehead that you're married to, of course I'm talking about the husband, never the wife, try to keep them accountable. So I encourage man on man, woman on woman, find somebody who can poke you in the chest and hit you where it hurts when you need it. Iron sharpens iron. So a man sharpens the countenance of his friend. You can also get accountability software. What? There is software that is actually 20 years old. They've upgraded it. You can put this software on your computer, on your smartphone, and it will send links, web history, a search history, every click that you make to this accountability partner that you designate, and they'll get to see all the searching that you've done on your phone, on your tablet, on your PC. You can do that. You can delete social media. I don't think you'll die. Studies have been done. You can delete social media. If this is a persisting issue where you fall into this quicksand and it sucks you down, delete it. Is it worth it? Really? Is it worth it, that mindless scrolling through whatever? Is it worth it? What do you get from that? Is it enriching your soul, your intimacy with God and your spouse, or your spouse-to-be? You can delete social media. True story. You can delete apps. You can block websites. You can just not watch movies that say rated R for extreme nudity. I wonder if this is going to be historically accurate. Really? How about we just don't watch that one? We'll just mark that one right off the list. We're just not going to watch shows that have graphic sex scenes in them. We're just not going to watch that. I don't need that in my living room because Jesus is my guest. So this is a true story. You guys might think this is extreme. Chaps, you're going over the top. We're in church and people don't do that in church. So let me just point out to you that normal, what we would call normal entertainment, normal relationships, are failing miserably. We talked about that the very first week. The state of marriage is in crisis. That more than half of us, statistically, in this holy bubble that we're in, more than half of us are going to divorce our spouse. And E5s and below, we talked about this before, the statistic 25 years and younger is even worse than that. It gets closer to 70%. Statistically, 75% of us in this room are engaged in some form of sexual immorality today. That's crazy. I'm like, no. I read it 5 times. No. 75%, no way. But this is true. And I'm not saying that 75% of us are sex addicts and sexual deviants. I'm not saying that. But I think that the majority of us, in a moment of honesty, might say, this is an area where I have struggled before or I am struggling now. We have to talk about it. We have to talk about it. So, I encourage you, make choices starting today that are going to step you back from the quicksand, not closer to it. Make those choices and do it violently. Bleach, Lysol, no poop on my face. Okay, that was outward purity. Inward purity. My second blank for you there in your notes. Inward purity. And go ahead and flip over to Psalm 119. Psalm 119, and we're going to read verses 9 through 11. Inward purity is the things that we think about. What? Yes, the things that we think about. Jesus said, you've heard it said, if you commit adultery or have sex with a woman outside your marriage, it's adultery. But I say, if you look at a woman with lust in your heart, you've committed adultery. Inward purity is important to God. The things that we think about, we feel, this is the stuff that is just between you and God. Only God sees this stuff. So 4 things I think, we're going to read verses 9 through 11, and then share 4 things I think can help us cultivate inward purity. In verse 9 it says, how can a young man keep his way pure? By guarding it according to your word. So number 1, we see him say, guard it. Guard your purity. How can you keep your way pure? You guard it. You delete things, you block things, you get accountability partners, you have a battle buddy that's going to help you fight for your purity. Put up those fences. And it says, verse 10, with my whole heart I will seek you. My whole heart I will seek you. That sounds familiar. With my whole heart I will seek God. Doesn't that sound familiar? Our first commitment is that we would seek God, that we would follow Jesus, that we would be in this fellowship, this intimate relationship with Jesus. So, pause there. There I was, walking the streets of Vegas. Crazy place. So I hadn't been there in about 10 years, but I know what's coming, so I'm prepared, I'm geared up, prayed up, ready to go. And you just can't help but be accosted by images flashing on billboards, on the streets. They're giving you cards. You try to look down, it's littered on the street. These images are everywhere. So when I was assaulted by these visual images, this temptation to sin, to lust after these images, I would lock eyeballs with Julie. And most of the time, as my head snapped and looked at Julie, I'm not looking, babe, I'm not looking. She was like, I know you're not, you're looking at me. So Julian, she's real good like that. She's keeping me accountable. I appreciate that. But I would turn my head because I know who's with me. I know that I'm walking with her and I'm seeking purity with her. And all this stuff is going to be like quicksand that sucks me down and draws me out of intimacy with God and with her. So I lock eyeballs with her. And this is what he's saying you do as a young man trying to keep your way pure. You lock eyeballs with Jesus. Let me not wander from your commandments. So this is the third thing. You follow God's blueprint. You follow God's blueprint. I think there's a specific plan that God has for purity. It's not a big secret. He tells us how we ought to live our lives and to be holy and righteous, to be as He is, to be blameless. Not even a hint of sexual immorality. He gives us the blueprint. So what he's saying is, let me not wander from your commands. Follow the blueprint. And then finally he says, I've stored up your word in my heart that I might not sin against you. This isn't a casual reading of the word on a Sunday morning, listening to a nice sermon podcast. This is the intentional study for memorization and meditation so that I have it in store, ready for use on the battlefield. To hide God's word in my heart is like stocking up my magazine pouches for when I go outside the wire. Right now you guys are getting your magazine pouches stuffed with ammunition that you'll be able to use to combat temptation when you leave this place. So coming and getting time in the Word and meditating on it and soaking it up and memorizing it so that when I go outside the wire and I don't necessarily have my ammunition dump on me, I don't have the whole Word of God with me, it's just up here, it's just what I got on me. I got to be ready. And sometimes I need to go back and reload and get ready to fight again. This is what memorizing God's Word, hiding in my heart so I'm always ready for the fight. That's what that means. These are all ways that we can develop inward purity. I have just a few more thoughts for you by way of conclusion. Romans 12:2. Go ahead and read that for you. Romans 12, verse 2. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is the good and acceptable and perfect will of God. So what I would submit to you is that as you strive for our purity, as you strive for inward purity, you will experience a transformation of your heart and mind so that those very things that used to be appealing to you, that used to entice you, and I just need one more look, I just need one more glance, I just need one more to feed my appetite, those things will start to be like poop on your face. I pray that for you. I pray that for myself. That I would be so disgusted by even a hint of sexual immorality because I know the cost, and it's not worth it. It's not worth it to allow this division between my intimacy with God first and then my intimacy with my wife second. No way. It's not worth it. I don't even want a tiny bit of poop on my face. No thanks, I'm good. It's sticky. It smells bad. It's really hard to get off once it dries. It's bad. Whew. Guys, this is going to be a challenge. If you set out for purity, and if you are in here today and you've never made this kind of line in the sand commitment to stay pure, and you do this today, which I'm going to ask you to do, if you do this today, you're going to be challenged. You're going to be attacked. Because I think that the devil and all of his minions are waiting for you to make a stand like that. Oh, really, big boy? Oh, really, tough girl? You're going to stand for purity? You haven't been doing that for the last 21 years, and you're going to do that now? Okay. Let me just throw a little bit of that way. Let me just throw a little bit of this way. And he's not new at this. He knows what he's doing. And Romans 3:23 says that all have sinned and continue to fall short of God's glory. But while we will not ever be pure this side of heaven, 100%, we talked about this in Sunday school this morning, the command is that we would be holy. The command is that we would strive with all our might, with God's help, to stay pure. I want to read one last verse for you. I'll just quote it to you. It's from 1 John 1:8-9. It says, if any man says he's without sin, he's lying. If you say you're without sin, if you say that, I don't struggle with that, chaps, I'm good. I'm good with my fences, I'm good with my barriers, I don't need an accountability part, I'm good. If you say you're without sin, you're lying. And maybe it's not to the exact degree I've defined today, but you have your struggles. The second part of this verse is that God is faithful. If you confess your sins, he is faithful and just to forgive you and to cleanse you of all unrighteousness. So my appeal to you is if you don't struggle with this right now, then let the strong you of today shore up the defenses for the weak you tomorrow. Julie has told me this many, many times. I don't care if she's 800 pounds with hairy armpits and doesn't speak English. I don't care. It could still be in the right scenario, the perfect storm, the perfect set of circumstances. You could fall. You could be tempted. So set up those barriers, set up those fences right now. That makes a lot of sense. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. If this is something that you're struggling with, my encouragement to you is to be brutally honest and violently cut this stuff out of your life. Is it worth it, really? Is it worth it to hold on to? Is it worth it? It's going to drag you down, separate you from God and from your spouse or your future spouse. Is it worth it? No. I don't want to see any poop on your face. I don't want you to smell any poop on my face. That's powerful. I hope you guys remember that. If anybody wants to change a diaper, Anyways, I want to encourage you from this day forward, seek God, fight fair, have fun.